Did Jamie Dimon, of all people, just admit that he was wrong about Bitcoin? At this week's Future Investment Initiative Summit in Saudi Arabia, the JPMorgan CEO, who once said he'd fire any employee caught holding Bitcoin, was asked point blank if his views have changed. His response shocked the audience, including myself. But what's even more revealing is what he didn't say. So today we're going to break down the clip. We're going to analyze the shift and contrast it with Larry Fink's recent comments at the same event on Bitcoin and gold. Insights that confirm what many in the Bitcoin space, including you guys, have been expecting for years. Because while they both now sound like they're on Team Bitcoin, their ulterior motives are clear as day. And you'll want to make sure they don't fool you along with the rest of retail. So strap in, make sure you drop a like on the video, and stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this one. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your weekly session. I want to welcome to the stage my co-host with the most, Mr. Nathan Fitzsimmons of the Bitcoin Mentor. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mr. Sessions. How are you doing today? Did you see we got some more Bitcoin improvement protocols, including maybe a soft fork on the horizon?
Yeah,
things are. I feel about it.
Things are as spicy as ever in that camp. And as I was looking at that, there's some things looking back at previous contentious times that I think Bitcoiners should be aware of in the case of if this were to result in a hard fork. There's certain things that came up last time around that people were unaware of and caused them to lose a lot of Bitcoin in the process. So we'll touch on some of those technicals that you're going to want to be informed of because otherwise, if you make a wrong move, it's possible for somebody to steal Bitcoin from you in the event of a hard fork. But we'll get to that in a moment, but let's talk JPMorgan, specifically Jamie Dimon. So he's at this event in Saudi Arabia. It is, I'm going to pull up my screen here, so forgive for me for a moment there. But yeah, so there's this event happening in Saudi Arabia. It is called the Future Investment Initiative event, I guess, from an institute there. There's a lot of people there, a lot of heavy hitters, including Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink. Jamie Dimon, rather. And so I want to bring up this clip of Jamie Dimon being asked if he has changed his mind on anything related to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all of that. Pretty interesting and telling his response. I want you guys to listen closely, not for what he says. Yes, of course, listen to what he says, but listen to what he omits. Listen to what he doesn't say here.
Skeptical of crypto at one point. He was still skeptical.
I've gotten away with no damage so far. Crypto is real. It can mean blockchain, stable coins. You have a JPMorgan deposit coin. You can move stuff. Smart contracts are real. All that stuff is real. It will be used by all of us to facilitate, better transactions and customer service.
If anybody will...
So, he seems to be very much in the camp of, hey, like this stuff is real now. Everybody, he said it's going to be used by everyone. Nathan, did you notice one word that he did not use there?
I'm not sure he said sorry. That was first and foremost, but he never said the word Bitcoin. Weird. Yeah. Weird that that wouldn't come up.
All of it, crypto, blockchain, token, all of that, stable coin, all of that.
Smart contract.
Yeah. No Bitcoin specifically. Now, it could be a case of him, shoving together Bitcoin and crypto into one bucket. That could be the way he's looking at it. However, I have a little bit of a different theory here. Before we dive into that, though, before we talk about incentives, I do want to also mention about Larry Fink at the same event talking about Bitcoin and gold, specifically in the context of today's economic outlook. So Larry Fink, he's at the same event And he described both Bitcoin and gold as assets of fear during his remarks at this event. He said and argued that investors are increasingly turning to these assets due to anxiety over the debasement of traditional holdings and mounting concerns around global financial stability. Quote, owning crypto assets or gold are assets of fear. You own these assets because you're frightened of the debasement of your assets. He also noted worries extended to physical and financial security of holdings. Now, going further on the dollar dependency, he said, addressing the U.S. economic landscape, Fink expressed concerns about American reliance on selling dollar-based assets to foreign investors. He warned, we are still a nation that needs 30 to 35% of all our treasury sales going overseas. And to me, that's the biggest issue today. If that ever changed, it has a multiplier effect because of the dependency on selling dollar-based assets to foreigners, meaning what happens to the currency when people stop desiring the currency, when things stop being denominated in dollars? And he's effectively saying that Bitcoin and gold are a bet on that actually happening. And we see it globally. We see countries saying, you know what, we're going to settle, the petrodollar is no more. We're going to settle these things in, you know, the Chinese yuan, or in some cases, Bitcoin, as Russia has talked about doing and just made legal for cross-border settlement. Now, back to JPMorgan for a second and Jamie Dimon. JPMorgan, the company, and the CEO, Jamie Dimon, have been very much at odds in opinion, seemingly publicly facing until this moment. You have JPMorgan, the company, saying Bitcoin price is undervalued. This is earlier in October. It's undervalued. They see a path to $165,000 per coin this calendar year. And said this is comparing it to gold with a potential rise to 165K. And again, they say it could go, again, up to 40% above current levels. The steep rise in gold price over the past month has made Bitcoin more attractive to investors relative to gold, especially as Bitcoin to gold volatility ratio keeps drifting lower below 2. So, I mean, JPMorgan itself, the company and its actions, seem to be very much in line with Bitcoin is a real thing. We think it has value. We think it will continue to have more value, even to the tune of now allowing people to use Bitcoin as collateral for loans. And so their actions are saying Bitcoin has value. Jamie Dimon is saying everything but Bitcoin, but his company is taking these actions. And this is in an environment where things are not looking so hot overall. The Fed seems to be panicky. Obviously, you have Jerome Powell the other day cutting interest rates. He said, our long-stated plan is to stop balance sheet runoff when reserves are somewhat above the level we judge consistent with ample reserve conditions. We may approach that point in the coming months. So this is from Zero Hedge. They're saying the translation here, the money printer is warming back up. If you've been paying attention, this shouldn't come as a surprise. The playbook has been obvious for a while. First come rate cuts right now, then stop quantitative tightening, which is basically slated for December 1st. And then comes quantitative easing or money printing, probably sometime in early 2026. All the pundits are saying rate cuts for at least 3 more in the beginning of next year. And so what's forcing their hand? It says even without President Trump's constant pressure, the Fed doesn't have a choice. The job market is collapsing. Companies have announced damn near 1 million, but 950,000 job cuts so far this year. That's a 55% jump from 2024 and the highest since the beginning of the pandemic. Meanwhile, Americans are searching help with mortgage on Google at levels not seen since the 2008 financial crisis, with mortgage rates around 6.3%, double the 3% rates most locked in during 2020 to 2021, and inflation compounding at 10 to 15% over 4 years. Homeowners are tapped out. The Fed can't fix these problems with rate cuts alone, so they're moving to the next phase, ending QT, and firing up QE soon after. The article goes on to talk about their balance sheet, how much money they created over the pandemic, and how they tried to reel it in, but they effectively couldn't. So here's their balance sheet, and I'll try to zoom up a little bit on this, but you can see that the money printing just exploded. They basically they printed like 40% of all existing money. They tried to reel it back in. Pre-pandemic, the balance sheet was somewhere around 4 trillion. In the midst of the pandemic, they got up into the 9 trillion range. They reeled it back a little bit. Right now, we're sitting at a balance sheet of around 6.6 trillion. They're basically saying we're done reeling it back in. So there's 40, what is that? 50, almost 60% above what they were pre-pandemic. So they're just saying like, yeah, that's it. And so in the article, they effectively say that, and if I can get back to it, they effectively say that the problem is when they go into QE again, they're starting from this new normal of a massive balance sheet, 60% higher before they started printing. And what that means, and this is the crazy part at the end of the article, when they say, kicking off the next money printing cycle from a $6.6 trillion balance sheet instead of 4, with so much pandemic era cash still sloshing around the system, all but guarantees double-digit inflation. We're talking about potential currency destruction on a scale and at a speed America has never seen. The most important 2 words of the whole thing: position accordingly. And I jump back to the original clip of Mr. Jamie Dimon and him saying, or his actions rather. Let's discuss what he's saying and what he's actually doing. What he's actually doing is his company is warming up to Bitcoin, saying this is value. This has value. We want to be taking this as collateral. We see this going up in the future. What he's saying is everything except Bitcoin. So what's the incentive here? It's, I love Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. It's give me the Bitcoin. He is this guy. He's a sleazy car salesman, and he's trying to sell you a shitty deal. He's trying to get people. I guarantee you, JPMorgan is going to have Bitcoin accounts. They're going to keep it in their custody. They're going to have products. He's talking about having deposit coins and JPMorgan coins and the stable coins and the other coins and everything. He doesn't want to lose market share. He wants you to go through him, as always has been the case. He wants your money. And it's no different from Larry Fink, right? Larry Fink's playing a little bit of a different game. He's overtly saying Bitcoin is the solution, but his solution is custodied Bitcoin with BlackRock, right? With IBIT. He's saying, and they've pushed so hard to make it easy for people to give them their real Bitcoin, right? The in-kind redemptions. Anybody who doesn't know what in-kind redemptions means, it's basically like, hey, you can, if you have Bitcoin, you can give the Bitcoin into custody, say to like Coinbase that's custodying them, to redeem for the ETF. And the draw for somebody would be, oh, well, I can get it into a tax-free or a tax-deferred or tax-sheltered vehicle into my IRA or whatever it is through that. And then that helps me in that sense. But does it? Does it? Because what's coming around the corner from everybody giving up their physical Bitcoin? It's another fucking executive order 6102. If you don't think that they're going to at some point say, listen, this is tanking the dollar. Nobody wants dollars. Everybody wants the Bitcoin. So like it's going to be, you're not allowed to self-custody it. I don't know what to tell you, but like, in my opinion, the writing's on the wall. Nathan, what do you think about all this?
My lord, where to begin on that one? One, I believe there's also some new IRS rules or reporting that has to come into effect in 2026 as well too. So they're definitely setting up for identifying where all the Bitcoin is, and absolutely they want to get it into their trusted partners' hands. And I completely agree with you in the sense that they know what the better asset is. They're going to end up stacking the better asset. And they're going to sell you a bunch of shit coins and stuff on top of it, right? Banks make their money by being an unnecessary middleman, right? Bitcoin obfuscates them. It gets around them, which is why they fought it for so long, why they denied it for so long. But eventually, they're just going to try and insert themselves into that same sort of system. If you think for 1 second they're going to let Tether take over the stablecoin market at the end of the day, or let Coinbase be in charge, be the one selling them crypto shit coins, if there's going to be Bitcoin banks, which I believe that there will be, I mean, even Hal Finney talked about it way back in the day, then the existing commercial banks have a lot of lobbying power, have a lot of financial power, and they will try and kick out the existing and take over that role. They're past the point of they're not fighting it anymore. They're not going to try and sell you some shitcoin shovels and try and steal your money and just stack Bitcoin and treasuries and other things along the way while we have this transitionary period.
Yeah, 100%. And I see some comments that are, I think, on the nose here in the chat. Somebody just said, an intuitive guy, very intuitive, as a matter of fact, said strategy will be the U.S. Bitcoin reserve strategy. I think that's totally right. I think that's an eventuality that will come to pass.
The writing's already on the wall, Ben. Remember, I think it was Intel, right? The U.S. government now owns a share of Intel. That the U.S. government has already started normalizing, basically taking control of, what do you say, strategic or like military strategic companies, right? These are things that we need for infrastructure. We've had Jason Lowery, his soft fork thesis, that this is basically a power projection, that this is critical for strategic global purposes. If they justify that at any point in time, 100%, they will just say MicroStrategy is now ours for strategic military purposes.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's the way that they get you, the individual, the person watching this that has self-custody Bitcoin, which if you haven't self-custody Bitcoin, for the love of God, please do. Lots of resources on the channel. Go to, and actually I'll even just drop the QR code while I'm talking here down below. But go to btcsessions.ca/learn, or just scan that QR code. Bunch of free tutorials to get you started on that path. But I digress. The whole playbook to get people to comply is to offer up some sort of carrot on a stick. And one of those would be, again, in-kind redemptions. Hey, you're in a tax-deferred vehicle, whatever it may be. Like, there's some sort of incentive there to buy, to get into the ETF and give up your custody. Another method of this that we've seen, and I wouldn't say that it's the goal of like taking the Bitcoin for the state, but it will be a vehicle for that to be able to happen, is the treasury company play, man. Like the old, and I know that people don't like sometimes people referring to these companies as shitcoins, but like, in a way, like that's the tactic. It's, I love Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. And it is, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. You should buy shares in our company that is buying Bitcoin. Or you could just buy the Bitcoin.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like, I recognize there's instances where people are like, you know, I have money in some sort of an account that is a retirement account, and there's tax benefits. The money's already in there. And so what is available to me? And, you know, maybe they're getting strategy. Maybe they're getting a Bitcoin ETF. It's a little bit different, though, if you're taking something that you could be buying, your own self-custody Bitcoin with, and then instead doing that. You know, if you have money in retirement accounts and this is kind of your option, then you can absolutely do that. But I would say also be self-custodying Bitcoin. It is so important. And I think that down the line, this turns into this.
Yep.
Right.
I completely agree, Ben. The people that I've seen that have lost, or I've spoken to that have lost Bitcoin, it wasn't because somebody hacked them. it almost never is, right? The majority of Bitcoin that I've seen that's lost and people that I've directly talked to, it's because of both pride and greed. It's one of those two every time. They got too greedy, too fancy. They wanted leverage. They wanted something with the other one is yield. It's like, I don't care how you explain it to me. As soon as I see yield on any sort of Bitcoin product, I'm immediately red flag. It's like, I'm not going to touch it, right? But it's greed that people get too greedy and they fall for a scam or a company that just didn't have good practices that goes belly up, or pride. And they think that they know enough and they know just enough to get hurt, but they stop learning, right? They stop trying to educate themselves, understand how the tech, how everything works under the hood. It's always one of those two.
Yeah, 100%. And again, in the comments, I see self-custody can indeed be intimidating. That I fully understand. It's something brand new to a lot of people. But, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like you got to put in the elbow grease, and it's unfamiliar, but it's not impossible. In fact, I would argue that it's actually pretty attainable for most people. If you're capable of using a smartphone and downloading an application, you're capable of self-custodying Bitcoin. If you're capable of keeping an important document safe, like a passport or a birth certificate or something like that, you are capable of self-custodying Bitcoin. The only rub is the process is a little new. And so there's some practice involved there. That is totally okay. And it's important that you get familiar, because we ourselves did not live through Executive Order 6102. And it was a long time ago. And so nobody today has any direct experience with something like this happening, which is the perfect time for them to do it again. And so if you don't think it can happen to you, that's because it just hasn't happened yet.
I agree.
On the other side of this, we're going to kind of change gears, but also in the realm of protecting your Bitcoin. There's a lot of stuff going around regarding Bitcoin and potential forks, and a fork meaning like Bitcoin as it, you know it, potentially splitting into two different versions of Bitcoin. I'm going to I'm going to mince words here a little bit, but this has happened before where there's confusion and all of a sudden there's two different coins and which one is Bitcoin and all of that. And there's forks that are hard forks and soft forks. There's something that is proposed as a soft fork, meaning that one coin continuing with a restriction with some added rules. There's a proposal for something like that, but it's a proposal that could potentially result in a split that would result in two separate coins. Which one is Bitcoin? And that's where the rub comes in. And there's some historical learnings that I lived through, that I watched happen, where if that did come to pass, you need to be careful in how you handle your Bitcoin and how you move it. You need to be cognizant of, if there were a split, if all of a sudden there was another coin, and even if you decide this is Bitcoin, this is some other shit coin, I'm going to sell the other shit coin, there's a way you can lose all your Bitcoin in doing that. We're going to discuss that in a moment, and what this proposal is. But in the meantime, everybody that's joining us, if you're brand new to the channel, thank you for being here. Welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Make sure you drop a like on the video if you're enjoying the conversation. And we're going to be back in 1 minute after a quick shout out to our sponsors to tell you all about the precautions you should take in the event of a fork. We'll see you in a sec. Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC Sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions. CoinKite has been in the game for years, creating hands down the best and most secure hardware when it comes to securing your Bitcoin. The Cold Card Q is an absolute powerhouse and my daily driver, and it's ideal for newcomers and advanced users alike. The Tap Signer gives you a low-cost, user-friendly option for those just getting started or for convenience when traveling. You can head to coinkite.com and use code BTC Sessions for discounts, or simply scan the QR code on the screen to get started right away. DEBIFI is the best and easiest way to borrow against your Bitcoin in a non-custodial way. Funds are held in a multisig escrow where you hold a key, and the platform allows for excellent hardware like the Cold Card Mark IV and the Q. You have access to flexible conditions, the best rates, and institutional grade liquidity. If you're looking to make use of your capital, don't sell your Bitcoin, borrow against it. You can head over to debify.com to check them out, or simply scan the QR code on the screen. All right, we are back in, and we're going to be chatting about BIP 444. Now, before we dive in, of course, did you know that almost 40% of you are not subscribed? If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel and hit that little notification bell. A lot of people don't realize when a show even happens, so make sure you hit that little bell. That'll help you a ton. But BIP 444, the Bitcoin soft fork proposal dividing developers and the community. Let's chat about it. So this has to do with, kind of the knots versus core, putting arbitrary data onto the Bitcoin blockchain, images, files, all this kind of stuff. What recently happened with Core is they loosened the default limit of the amount of data that can be shoved in a field called the op return field. And a lot of people see that as, their reasoning was, well, this is the most efficient place to put it if people are going to put it, and they seem to want to, so we're going to loosen this restriction by default so it's easy for them to do it there instead of elsewhere, which would cause more bloat, and it would be harder to host all that data for node runners. Other people say, well, if you don't want something done in general, why would you make it easier to be done, even if it's a more efficient way of doing it? So this is kind of the back and forth. And so we've seen what was kind of by and large the most used implementation of Bitcoin by far, like 90-something% on the regular Bitcoin core, drop below 80% of the globally visible nodes. And we've seen Bitcoin knots, which reinstates those limits and allows for you to set all kinds of limits on the transactions sitting in what's known as your mempool, the transactions waiting to be added to the Bitcoin blockchain. You can set a whole bunch of limits and say, I'm not going to relay these transactions unless they're actually in a block. And so Bitcoin knots is now over 20% of the existing nodes. So it's a clear indication that people were upset with the decision of development in and around Bitcoin Core. Now, what we've seen is this proposal, and this proposal would temporarily restrict non-financial data on Bitcoin's blockchain as a soft fork, meaning that it wouldn't result in a new coin. It would just add some rules to the existing Bitcoin blockchain at the consensus level. So it would activate and it would basically say no transactions over this data size. People are saying that this could be construed as censorship. And if we can do this, then we could censor other types of transactions potentially. So let's chat a little bit about how this would work. So reduced data temporary soft fork. This is what it's going to be called. Proposal calls for a 1-year restriction on arbitrary non-financial data stored in Bitcoin blocks, essentially rolling back a recent change from Bitcoin Core in version 30. This removed the 83 byte cap on the op return outputs. That update opened the floodgates again to data heavy transactions, some useful, others are just what people would consider as spam. The authors of this BIP, Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 444, argue that Bitcoin this has turned Bitcoin into a dumping ground for everything from NFTs to inscriptions, threatening the fees, block space, and even legal liability if illegal images are put on chain. The proposed soft fork would reimpose temporary limits. Okay, so the split, what is going on here? Again, the supporters say Bitcoin survival depends on keeping it a monetary network. They warn that allowing unrestricted data uploads could lead to illegal or copyrighted content being permanently etched on chain. Worth noting that this has already happened in the past. There is illegal content on chain. I won't say some of the stuff, but one example would be like blueprints for 3D printing guns, things that the government would not like, now immutably on chain. Okay, fair enough. They say that this risks turning Bitcoin into a tool only legally protected corporations can run, centralizing what was meant to be trustless. I can see the worry. I'm not sure if I line up with that exactly, and we'll dive into that momentarily and have a conversation about it. However, critics say BIP 444 is a slippery slope towards censorship. Again, Peter Todd, another developer, demonstrated that the proposal could be easily bypassed and showed how to do it. Others warned that enforcing subjective definitions of non-financial data would make node operators de facto compliance officers, antithetical to Bitcoin's permissionless design. BitMEX research added that malicious actors could weaponize the rule, deliberately embedding illegal material to trigger node reorgs or chain splits. Now, what I worry about here is the potential for this to trigger a hard fork as well. Because with a soft fork, if it were to be activated, but there were still nodes that were allowing for larger transactions with data in them, then what you get is if they create a block that has a larger transaction and this soft fork is active, then people running the new BIP 444 would see that larger transaction as invalid. And if they start building a chain with the larger transactions and the other nodes are saying that's invalid, they'll start building a chain with only small transactions in it, and you get a chain split. That would be, I guess you could say that would be a hard fork. Or I don't know, how would you phrase that? Because it is a chain split, but is it a hard fork, Nathan? Now my definitions are getting away from me.
I'm trying to think, because essentially, if the other transactions would then be invalid with the larger op return, that would cause a chain split. But I don't think it's technically a hard fork because it's still backwards compatible. So if the new chain got ahead, the other group might actually revert back to it. So basically, if there was a split and we had a brief kind of one with a large op return and we had the other one without the large op return, if they built upon the one with the not large op return, the large op return one would be dropped and everyone would rejoin on the heavier chain that did not have that data in there.
Yeah.
So it would require, it would be a perpetual chain split until they decided, because they said it's temporary, which I still got to get my head around that aspect as well too, because it doesn't seem that it can be temporary to me.
Well, it can, and actually, I'll show you. There's a discussion around this. How do you create a restriction of rules temporarily? Because typically, the way it works is if you do a soft fork, to reverse the soft fork, you have to do a hard fork. And when you, again, everybody listening, when you hear soft fork and hard fork, soft fork means backwards compatible. Hard fork means not backwards compatible. Soft fork is a tightening of rules. So that everything that you're currently doing is still valid by the old definition of things. A hard fork is a loosening of the rules. So something you're doing now was previously not allowed. And that's why it requires everybody to kind of update. Okay, so there's this discussion between Rob Hamilton and Bitcoin Error Log, aka John Carvalho, and they're talking about like how this would be a soft fork, even though it can be temporary. Greg Maxwell seems to have honed in on it. He says, I think you're right in your conclusion that the proposal isn't well considered or constructed, but it does appear to limit its scope to blocks within this height to this height until and including block 987424 are checked with these additional rules. This means that blocks past that block don't apply these rules. They will be accepted by this proposal. In fact, it is never removed, but becomes inactive. And so it isn't a relaxing of a rule, but a limitation on the scope of a new rule temporarily. Of course, without an implementation, there is uncertainty in what it could actually do. So basically he's saying like, you're introducing a new rule, you're tightening the rules, but you're saying the new rule takes place from this block to this block. And so it's a tightened rule in a certain period of time. So technically it could be a soft fork, but it could result in a chain split. I wonder, my worry here is that this becomes so contentious that it does somehow result in a hard fork. And this is kind of where I wanted to go with this is what happens in the instance of a hard fork, because a lot of people here won't have been around when that actually happened. So back in 2017, there were people that wanted to scale Bitcoin a certain way by growing the block size.
We call them retarded.
Yeah. Yes. And so what ended up happening was you had the creation of Bitcoin Cash. And at the time, they were saying, no, this is Bitcoin. We're gonna upgrade our nodes. We're gonna change the rules so now you can fit more transactions into a block. And when they did that, what ended up happening was effectively there's now two coins. There's the original version of Bitcoin, which continued going as is. And then you had basically a copy pasta of the exact same account balances at that exact point in time. So if you had one Bitcoin, you now also had one Bitcoin Cash on the other side. And all of the keys, all of the seed phrases, all of the addresses were exactly the same. Now that sounds nice and easy. Okay, cool. I've got hardware. I've got a seed phrase. I can just access the other coins. And if I think this other one, Bitcoin Cash, is a shit coin, I can dump it. I'll sell it to whoever, and then I'll go buy Bitcoin with this nice little airdrop that I just got.
Yeah, it sounds great, Ben. Free shitcoin to get rid of.
And in a way, it was a nice little gift to be able to stack extra corn at the time. However, here's the problem. There's something called a replay attack. And Nathan, I don't think you were aware of this when I mentioned it to you. I don't know if you were.
No, I was not aware of the replay attack. And it's funny because as soon as you explain, it's like, that seems blatantly obvious because they are copies of one another. So Ben, walk us through there.
Yeah. So let's say I did a peer-to-peer trade. I was like, okay, I've got this shitcoin now. I'm going to sell it. For some reason, Nathan wants my shitcoin. I say, I love Bitcoin. Buy my shitcoin. And Nathan says, yes, please. And so I go and I sell him all my shitcoins. You know, I have one Bitcoin and one Bitcoin Cash. And I send it to him and I say, can you pay me? You know, it's not worth anything. It's not worth much, but give me a certain amount of Bitcoin for that. Okay. Seems all hunky-dory, right? Transaction done. It's not. And the reason is Nathan took my Bitcoin Cash. Remember, it's a copy pasta of everything, of every single key and balance and address and so on and so forth, which means that what I just did on Bitcoin Cash would technically be possible on Bitcoin and look completely the same. And now Nathan has the actual broadcasted transaction of the Bitcoin Cash that went to him. And the replay attack is taking the exact same information and broadcasting it on the regular Bitcoin network. So in selling 1 Bitcoin Cash to Nathan, what I did was actually give him the information to send him the full Bitcoin on the regular Bitcoin chain. And that is exactly what happened back in 2017, because Bitcoin Cash, when it did the copy pasta, they said, no, we are Bitcoin. We are the new Bitcoin. And they didn't feel they needed to change anything. And the replay attacks started happening. And the moment this is one of the things that really cemented the loss that they clearly were not Bitcoin, was eventually they capitulated and they changed the addresses to update so that the replay attack wasn't feasible anymore. So the way that transactions were signed and the addresses worked were no longer, you couldn't do the same thing on Bitcoin. So that change denoted like, oh no, we're something different. Like it's not going to happen on the main Bitcoin chain. So I think that's part of one of the many things that made it clear that Bitcoin is Bitcoin and Bcash was Bcash. But this is very important to note. So if this ever happens, if there's ever a split, there's 2 coins and one is saying, hey, we're Bitcoin or whatever, and you want to get rid of that thing, what can you do? Well, you can do it one of 2 ways, but you need to move the entirety of one of those coins to a new address that you yourself own before moving it anywhere else. And I would say, actually, no, that's not even the case. You need to move your Bitcoin before you get rid of your shitcoin, because anything that you do from then on can be replayed. So effectively, even if you moved all your shitcoin to another address and then sold it to somebody, they could replay both transactions.
Yep.
You need to make it so it's invalid, so nobody can replay what you've done on the original Bitcoin, which makes claiming that shitcoin to get a little bit more Bitcoin a dangerous matter. You have to be very, very cautious of that, because even if it's in cold storage, it doesn't friggin' matter if the person has the signature that they can just repeat on the other chain.
I'll say the way that I would describe it is it's almost like you wrote me a check to move some funds from your JPMorgan to my account, but your account at Bank of America will also honor that check. And so I'm taking the same one to 2 different locations and getting both.
Yeah, exactly. So if anything, if there's ever an actual split that results from any of this, the most important thing is probably just don't do anything with the shitcoin for a while. If you do move it anywhere, just move it to an address that you yourself own. The other thing that I'll mention is if you're sitting in a custodial exchange, which is not advisable in the first place, but if you're sitting in a custodial exchange, most of the exchanges have already been through all this, and there were so many splits and forks and airdrops and all this crap. They've already written out that they're just not going to honor them anymore. Like a lot of them would be like, we're not. No, like if you want that stuff, you self custody it. So 2 reasons to not be sitting in sitting in a custodial exchange. One is you don't own the Bitcoin, but 2 is if there's a shitcoin airdrop, you also don't own that, and you're probably not ever going to get it. So yeah, those are kind of my main thoughts here. Nathan, is there anything else you wanted to add here in regards to either BIP 444 or potential chain splits, anything like that?
Yeah, there's a couple things I just wanted to touch on quick. One, there's a video of John Carvalho Aerolog in a conversation with Roger Ver from back in this time. If you haven't seen it, go and find it. It's absolutely delightful. You get to watch somebody really crash out there. 10 out of 10 recommend. And then the other one too is that I just want to share, because this one kind of helped me feel a little more reassured in the whole situation as well too, is that I had a wonderful conversation with a good friend. I don't know if he'd want me to talk about this publicly, so I won't name who it was, but he was pointing out that I'm kind of hopeful that like this soft fork and even the concerns around policy change aren't really going to be an issue. That his observation was, regardless of what's happening. So like the anti-censorship of Bitcoin comes from the fact that not only you have your own node, you can broadcast your own transactions, you hold your keys, and technically you could mine your own transactions at any point in time. He was kind of the opinion that regardless of which version is going to be used, that a lot of the major miners at some point in time will just stop mining stuff with large op return data, not because it's a policy or a consensus rule, just because they're massive billion-dollar companies that it's not worth the extra couple bucks to maybe take on some sort of legal headache or even just like brand issues, right? People start basically trying to drag them through the streets and hurt their public image. Like that has value to them too. That I think a lot of this op return stuff kind of goes away as large miners really just don't want to, it's not worth the risk of participating in it.
Yeah, 100%. I do wonder how a lot of this is going to play out. I actually hadn't heard that perspective before. But Francis tends to be pretty prescient. There's many a time where he has more or less laid out how he thinks things are going to go, and years later we look back and say, "Holy crap, that played out exactly." Actually, I interviewed Francis in the realm of all these forks and everything. I interviewed Francis in the summer and early fall of 2017, and I was in Montreal, and we hiked up whatever the mountain there is, I can't remember, but like in the middle of town.
Yeah.
We walked up it, and I interviewed him as we went. And at the very top, I'm like, how does this fork play out? Like this whole split, this SegWit 2x, like all the, besides the terminology, people trying to, get control of Bitcoin and split it and do all these different things. And he basically walked through exactly what he thought was going to happen, and he fucking nailed it. So if you can go back and you can find that the interview is still up, but look, 2017, probably September, he just walks through, hey, I think this is going to happen. And it was on the money. So when Francis has an inclination to believe how something is going to play out, it's worth a listen. That's for sure.
By the way, we're both kind of retarded. The mountain in Montreal is Mount Royal. So that kind of, I was pretty sure about that, but I was still like, let me just Google it just in case, being Albertan here.
Perfect. Well, nonetheless, when in doubt, just take a step back, take a breath, and move slowly and conscientiously, and you should be okay. We're going to change gears here. Our new favorite segment is coming up in a moment. It's one that we lovingly refer to. Nathan's favorite. What's it called, Nathan?
We're going to go with the Canada Sucks section. It's my favorite part of the show.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard, they are literally taking away people's homes in Canada, specifically in BC. And if this ruling in BC is any indication, there's going to be a lot more of it coming down the pipeline momentarily. We're going to talk about property rights, how you're going to own nothing and be happy, especially in Canada, and why owning Bitcoin is so important, along with a few other awesome new tech updates and something not necessarily directly related to Bitcoin, but built by Bitcoiners that is now helping people in Jamaica as the hurricane approaches. Very interesting. So we'll be back in just a moment. Quick shout out to sponsors. If you're enjoying the show, drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll be right back. Looking for a simple and secure way to manage your Bitcoin on mobile? AQUA Wallet has you covered. It's user-friendly and puts you in full control of your Bitcoin with secure self-custody. AQUA also supports Lightning and Liquid Network, making fast, cheap Bitcoin payments and asset transfers easier than ever. Plus, it even supports stablecoins, giving you ultimate flexibility. Built on open source code, AQUA is transparent, trustworthy, and perfect for beginner and pros alike. Ready to upgrade your Bitcoin experience? Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen now to download AQUA Wallet today. Securing your Bitcoin doesn't have to be complicated or invasive. With NUNCHUK's HONEYBADGER plan, you get state-of-the-art multisig with built-in inheritance planning and no KYC required. NUNCHUK is trusted by users to secure billions of dollars in Bitcoin. The HONEYBADGER plan offers 204 assisted multisig, guiding you step-by-step on mobile or desktop. It works seamlessly with hardware wallets like TapSigner, Coldcard, Jade, and plenty of others, so you're always in control. Plus, with non-KYC inheritance planning, you can ensure your Bitcoin goes to your loved ones. No private info needed. Take control of your Bitcoin today. Click the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen to check out the HONEYBADGER plan. All right, let's chat Canada taking away people's homes. This is wild. So anybody that's unfamiliar with what we do here, anytime there's an event in Canada, there's something called a land acknowledgement. So you might be, I don't know, you might be at like a dance recital. You might be at like a comedy show.
A town hall
meeting, whatever it is. And they'll get up and they'll be like, now before tonight's events, we would like to recognize that we are hosting this event on the lands of the such and such people from this tribe and this tribe, and basically saying like, we don't own this, over and over and over.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing now is the result of that. This is a man in Richmond, BC, Richmond, just kind of like in the Vancouver area. He's lived there. He's been in Richmond since 1975. I'm not sure if he owned his home since 75. He does still have a mortgage lender. So either he had a line of credit on his home or he got his mortgage later. But nonetheless, he has a mortgage and a home there. And he just got told by his mortgage lender, because of a new ruling in BC that says that that land is actually owned by a tribe that was there, I don't know how long ago, 100 years, 150 years, whatever.
So they claim.
Yeah, like way before, a long time.
Penicillin for the wheel.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever it is, it was before this man then entered into a contract to buy a home and live in this place for decades. They now say, oh, actually, it's these people's, this tribe's land. So here's the guy talking about what just happened.
And now, talk to your local MLA is what we're getting.
Within the demands you carried earlier than the 2025.
Yep.
What attribute is not telling you to? We're not having a story for you like you asked. We have a story for you.
He doesn't have any answers. He knew what's going on. He sat there and enjoyed his $400,000 a year he makes.
Yeah.
That's bitter. I'm bitter, yes. My tax dollars are at work right now. And who knows? I thought at least we're going to get a gift card out of this deal. Got nothing here tonight.
Are you going to continue to fight?
Oh, definitely. I'll be filing suit and stuff, right? I'll find out what my avenue is to go forward to protect my land. I've owned my land for more than enough years to know it's mine. I'm not giving it up without a fight.
And this isn't again, this is the area. 175 homes affected by the Cowichan land claim are unsellable. Private home sales in the area affected by the new native title in Richmond, BC, can now only proceed with buying and selling with the consent of the Cowichan Nation. And this is from their lawyer. So there's this whole area that's basically like, nope, this is ours, including. And Nathan, wasn't there like a warehouse, like corporate warehouses and stuff in there?
Correct. I'm pretty sure it was like it started with commercial land is where the ruling came from, and in fact, even I think Amazon warehouses at this point. And it was something along the lines of like they're saying like, and it's so like unprecedented. They're saying there's like dual title. They're saying like, no, you both have a title. Everyone can just get along. You have a title. You have a title. It'll be totally fine. And then it realized that it expanded beyond just that commercial area that was first in dispute, which I still can't believe that a judge ruled on that, which is just ridiculous. And you could see exactly what was going to happen, because now the banks use that house as collateral for the mortgage, but they're not sure who actually has the title. And so they're not going to touch it because they might get screwed if they loan out the money for the mortgage, but they actually have no claim to claw it back or have difficulty doing so. They're not going to bother. So they're not going to be able to get mortgages. They're not going to be able to sell this stuff. It's an absolute shit show. And it's just communism 101. Like, they're really getting rid of private property here.
Yeah. And this is now expanding outside of BC.
It is, of course it is, because it worked, Ben. It worked. It's like I got you to send me your shitty Bcash and I took your Bitcoin. I'll ask the next guy.
So look at this. The indigenous industry is now coming for half of Quebec. An Algonquin First Nation has filed a title claim in Quebec Superior Court over large swaths of territory across the west of the province, and is also seeking $5 billion from the government and crown corporations. Meanwhile, hundreds of homeowners in Richmond, BC, of course, are fighting for their homes. In this video, Dan Dix of Press for Truth explains why this is injustice. We'll listen to just a little bit of his initial rant.
I got no audio.
Nothing for you?
No, it could just be me, though.
Chat, let us know if you were hearing the audio. I'll play it a little bit. No audio, unfortunately. So sorry, chat. Either way, interesting. The guy just kind of breaks down, hey, like, this is what's happening. This is where it's now happening. Of course, the NDP, one of our parties up here in the Great White North, they voted down the Property Rights Protection Act before even hearing what was in it. This was proposed in the wake of what was happening in Richmond. And this is now starting to happen across Canada. There's been multiple now moves for various tribes to make claim on this land. So this is going to end up going to the Supreme Court. So yet another reason why Canadians are having a rough time. Outside of that, though, Toronto Food Bank smashes all records again in 2025. 4.1 million visits between April and March of last year to this year. 10% of Torontonians now use their services. 55% of users are newcomers to Canada. Furthermore, 1 in 4, I think was the recent stat, 1 in 4 Canadians now using the food bank. Multiple, I think it was like 1 in 10 Canadians are skipping meals.
Oh, dude, it's getting bad. I know people personally more and more that are having people fired around them or losing their jobs themselves. It's getting really crazy. Yeah,
it's wild. And so I guess for the end of the Canada Sucks section, we'll finish it up with a good jab, a well-placed jab from Nick Szabo. We have just in NVIDIA is now worth more than 2 Canadas. And a guy quoting it and saying, yeah, this is a bubble. And Nick Szabo said, it may be legit. Large language models have answered many more of my questions over the last year than Canadians have. So, not bad. Well played, Nick Szabo. Well played. Let's any final thoughts on the Canada situation?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to toss out there is I was trying to find the link here. I'm pretty sure it's like CanadianOrangeParty.com or something along those lines. But Caribou, who was involved in the Canada Trucker protest and was at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, he's starting a little bit of a political action group as well too. So for anyone seeing the ridiculousness that's going on, I'm not sure if it's the best vehicle to do so, but if you want to work with and help him, I want to give him that shout out.
Hell yeah. Love to hear it. Okay, I want to contrast 2 things on the technical side of Bitcoin that are being offered up to various people, different technologies, different segments of the market. So on one hand, we have IBM launching new Bitcoin wallets and custody services to institutions. While that's interesting and it's a big name, it's also custody services. So big corporation wanting to take your Bitcoin again. I love Bitcoin. Buy my shitcoin. We learned why that's bad. However, on the more positive and completely contrasting side of things, we have BitKey proposes a new Bitcoin improvement proposal called chain code delegation, a major step forward for multisig privacy. Instead of sharing full chain codes, it withholds them entirely. Co-signers get only the minimal info needed to sign a transaction without learning balances or unrelated activity. What this means in practice is, let's say you have a multisig, and if you don't know what a multisig is, you think a Bitcoin wallet, you've got one key to unlock your Bitcoin and spend it. A multisig, multiple keys required to unlock your Bitcoin and spend it, meaning you can put them in different places. So if somebody kicks in your door and takes a hardware wallet, they don't have enough to get your coins. And there's such thing as assisted multisig setups. So you maybe have a company that has one key, and you need at least 2 keys to unlock your Bitcoin. You have 2 keys in different locations. If you lose one or break one or whatever, you just are irresponsible and lose the device and the seed, you can go to the company and be like, can you help me approve this transaction and move my money? And they can indeed do that. The trade-off being they can see the balance because they are part of the multisig, and they can see all of the transactions and everything that you're doing and whatever they're approving. With this improvement proposal, they would see nothing. All they would see is, do you want to approve this? Yes or no. It's a massive upgrade for privacy when you are doing this. It also allows you for a self-sovereign multisig setup where you set it up yourself and you just want backup keys for family members. They can basically have the keys without knowing what's up. They just are like a recovery mechanism. Like, hey, you've got an additional key. You can help me with this, but you don't get to see what I'm holding. So I think this is badass. Nathan, what do you think?
No, I love it. And the thing that jumps out at me, which is why I think the collaborative custody partners out there will adopt it, is like, I remember like listening to NVK talking about customer data. Like, he doesn't want to have to collect it, right? I don't want that information, but I'm required to have it. Now it's another thing that I have to hold on to and secure, and it's a huge pain in the ass. So now any of the companies out there can use this. And if anyone ever knocks on their door and says, hey, I need to know their balance, I need to know their information, they can legit turn around and say, I don't have it. I didn't want to keep it. I don't have that information to protect or store. There's nothing here for me to hand over to you.
Yeah, 100%. So I look forward to this hopefully eventually being implemented. I think it would be a huge boon to privacy in what's already a pretty compelling and awesome multisig space. Like, all the stuff with Miniscript is incredible. I love all that. But this would just be a nice little cherry on top. So happy to see it.
100%.
Now I want to switch gears here. A couple last things, but there's a tool that was built by Bitcoiners, but not specifically for Bitcoin. And that thing is called BitChat. And so what this is, no, it's not bitch at, although I like to call
Where's
it
my BitChat? It just immediately brings me to that song.
Yeah. So it is BitChat. The idea is that in places, the initial impetus was for like a human rights kind of perspective. Hey, a tyrannical government, there's a protest. What do? Oftentimes, protesters trying to communicate and coordinate, they shut off the internet. All of a sudden, nobody has a line of communication. Well, BitChat solves that in that you have a chat agent that uses your Bluetooth and establishes mesh networks in a given area so that you can freely chat encrypted amongst people in the group. You can have individual one-on-one chats, create segregated small groups, all of that. And so this was created. And one of the cool things is they started to be able to anticipate things boiling over with civil unrest because they would see the downloads in advance of that happening for BitChat, because people would be like, hey, they might try to shut us down. Okay, great. Well, we're going to download this so we can still coordinate and talk on the ground when they do. Now, that's not the only use case, though, because natural disasters and emergencies, this is also very useful because internet connectivity may disappear. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. BitChat downloads are spiking in Jamaica. We've seen spikes in regions of civil unrest before. This is the first spike in response to a natural disaster. Our thoughts are with the people of Jamaica. We hope you and your friends and family are safe. So people in advance of this are anticipating internet may be down. If I have BitChat, I may be able to communicate locally in small delegated areas where there's that connectivity, and we can build a mesh network together to be able to communicate. I think that's what an awesome tool. So hats off to Jack Dorsey for vibe coding that up out of the blue, and Calais to continue on building that, and actually eventually adding in, I believe it's already kind of like in alpha, but using Bitcoin in it with Cashew, with eCash.
No, it's absolutely phenomenal. I love the Jack Dorsey redemption arc is a fun one to watch. And for anyone that hasn't already got this thing, like I was playing around with it at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, it's one of those apps that I would suggest, even if you have it so it's not turned on constantly, I would download it now. It's one of those, like, you keep a few emergency supplies in the car, in the home as well too. It's not going to take up a lot of space. Have that on your phone, because if you ever actually need it, if something goes wrong, you're going to be very glad that you already do have it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I had a bunch of I think at 3 or 4 different conferences I went to this year, they're like, all right, everybody download BitChat. And then it's just like, you open it up and you don't have to do anything. And you just start to see people popping into the room. And there's just like a global chat for everybody. Very interesting. Anyways, I did want to say that I'm in the midst of editing a tutorial video for it right now. Doesn't need too much of an explainer, but there's certain things with geotags and stuff like that that are pretty interesting that you can also utilize. So well worth taking a look at. And I think I'll be dropping that on Monday. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you do and hit that little notification bell so you can see when it comes out. And just in this realm of other things that I'm playing around with, you might see it. Well, we're not in a good view right now. Screen. Yeah, but I do have a fancy new little toy on my background right now, the Brains deck. It's like a customizable dashboard for things like the block height, mining stats, Bitcoin price. You can also just add in like clock and weather and all that kind of stuff. I've been playing around with it. Pretty fancy, pretty nice. So yeah, worth checking out. That one will probably be coming out in the next week or two as well. Lots of good stuff to play around with. So I'm very excited. But with that, we're tapped out here. We're going to wrap it up. Nathan, thanks for joining me. Everybody else that watched the show, thank you for being here. Again, please do drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed the conversation. Make sure you're subscribed so that you get all the tutorials, the live shows, and all the other fun Bitcoin goodness that comes out through the channel. And most importantly, it's always great to talk about the news and everything, but please do take action. Please do learn Bitcoin self-custody, learn the tools. I always play a clip at the very end of the episode to help you do that and point you towards the Learn page, which is a resource that we would love for you to use. With that, I'm out. I'm Ben. That's Nathan. And this was your weekly session. We'll see you guys soon. Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.